Have you ever found yourself alone in a quiet moment, maybe while folding laundry or tidying up the kitchen, and suddenly your mind drifts back to something your child once said? Words like, "You were never there for me," or "You didn't do enough," sound. And even if you don't believe it deep down, there's still a heaviness that settles in your chest. Because when that kind of blame comes from someone you nurtured, someone you would have done anything for, it doesn't just sting, it lingers. If that sounds familiar, I want you to know you're not alone. So many mums and dads in their 60s, 70s, even 80s are carrying the weight of guilt and blame that doesn't truly belong to them. Sometimes your adult child lashes out in anger, confusion or pain, and the easiest person to pin it on is you. The parent, the one who gave up sleep, gave up dreams, made sacrifices without ever keeping score. And now, here you are, wondering, was I really that bad? Let's pause for a moment, because I want to tell you something that might be hard to believe right now. You are not a bad parent just because your child is upset, struggling, or blaming you. Pain, especially in adulthood, has a funny way of rewriting the past, and sometimes our children go looking for someone to blame when their own lives aren't going the way they hoped. That doesn't mean the blame is fair or true. What we're going to talk about today is how to handle these accusations in a way that protects your peace, helps you regain your confidence, and maybe, just maybe, creates room for healing between you and your child. It starts not by trying to change them, but by refocusing on you. So, let's talk about that first moment when your adult son or daughter says something that hits you like a punch to the gut. Maybe they tell you they resent you. Maybe they say you were never emotionally present. Maybe they accuse you of things that feel so far from the truth that you don't even know how to respond. The natural instinct is to defend yourself, to say, "That's not true, I did the best I could," and you probably did. But here's the hard truth. Arguing back usually doesn't work. It just adds more fuel to a fire that's already burning too hot. Instead of reacting, I want you to breathe. Just breathe. It sounds simple, but that breath gives you time, and in that space, you can choose something different. You can choose self-compassion. That's our first powerful shift, replacing self-blame with self-compassion. I know you've probably been carrying guilt for years. Maybe about working too much, or yelling when you were overwhelmed, or not knowing what to do when they were teenagers. But every single parent in the history of the world has made mistakes. There's no such thing as a perfect mother or perfect father. We all did what we could with the tools we had. And the fact that you're here now, still trying to understand, still trying to do better, that says more about your heart than any mistake ever could. Let me ask you this. Have you ever watched a movie with someone, and afterward you both had completely different feelings about it? You might say, "That was beautiful," and they say, "It was boring." Same movie, different experience. Parenting is a little like that. There's always a gap between what we meant and how it was received. You might have intended to be strong, and your child saw it as cold. You might have meant to protect, and they felt controlled. That gap doesn't mean either of you were wrong. It just means you were seeing the same situation through different lenses. So what do you do when that gap turns into a canyon and your child starts throwing all the blame across it at you? Here's something that can feel uncomfortable at first, but can be a powerful bridge builder. Instead of defending yourself, try saying this: "I'm sorry that what I did hurt you. That was never my intention." Now, before you pull away from that, hear me out. This isn't admitting guilt for something you didn't do. This is acknowledging their pain without surrendering your truth. It's not saying, "Yes, I was a bad parent." It's saying, "I care that you're hurting, and I'm strong enough to sit with you in that hurt without making it about me." When you do that, when you remove yourself as the enemy in their story, you give them a chance to see things more clearly. It might not happen right away, but something shifts, and if you stay calm, If you hold steady, you show them what true emotional strength looks like. Some of you might be thinking, but what if they're just being cruel? What if they keep attacking me? And that's a fair question. If your adult child is verbally abusive, if they cross the line repeatedly and show no desire to have a respectful relationship, then it's time to do something just as important as compassion. Set boundaries. Not walls, boundaries. You can love someone and still say, I will not let you speak to me that way. You can want reconciliation and still protect your peace. That is not selfish, that is self-care, and it is absolutely necessary for your health mentally, emotionally, and even physically. Now, none of this is easy. It takes courage to respond with calm when you feel attacked. It takes strength to say, I'm sorry that hurt you, without adding, but you're wrong. And it takes wisdom to know when to engage and when to step back. But you have that strength. You've lived enough life to know that relationships are complicated, that healing takes time, and that you are not defined by someone else's pain. You have the right to forgive yourself. You have the right to choose peace. You have the right to love your child and still not let their anger control your heart. So if today you're sitting with the weight of those words, you were a bad parent, I want you to breathe. Let go of the need to argue. Let go of the need to be perfect, and pick up something far more powerful, compassion for yourself. Because you're still here. You're still trying, and that means more than you know. Now that you've begun to see yourself with a little more kindness, maybe just a tiny bit more grace, it's time to talk about something that trips up a lot of loving parents. And that is this very human, very understandable urge to fix everything. See, when your child is hurting, whether they're 5 years old or 55, it pulls on something deep inside you. It's the part of you that always wants to soothe, solve, and somehow make it all better. That instinct is beautiful. It comes from love. But here's the truth we don't talk about enough. When your child is an adult, especially when they're blaming you, trying to fix them might actually make things worse. Because often they don't want you to fix anything, they just want you to hear them. And for a lot of us, especially if you were raised in a generation where emotions were kept quiet and problems were solved with hard work and prayer, just sitting with someone else's pain without trying to fix it can feel strange. But it's powerful. Think back to a time when you were struggling, really struggling. Maybe you were raising kids on your own, or taking care of your aging parents, or going through something deeply personal. Do you remember how healing it felt when someone simply listened, not judged, not interrupted, not offered solutions, just sat with you and let you talk? That's what your child might need more than anything. So the next time your son or daughter brings up the past, even if their words sting, try this. Listen fully. Let them say what they need to say, and instead of correcting them, instead of trying to fix or explain, just say, I hear you. That's it. I hear you. It doesn't mean you agree. It just means you're creating space. And sometimes, space is what love looks like. And if they push harder, if they keep going back to the same blame, the same pain, you can keep your peace. By remembering something essential, you are no longer responsible for their choices. As adults, you raised them, you gave them what you could, and now they are walking their own path. You don't need to carry their adulthood on your back. That brings me to something that might surprise you. It's the idea that letting go of guilt doesn't mean letting go of love. A lot of parents think, if I stop feeling guilty, doesn't that mean I've stopped caring? Not at all. In fact, the more you let go of guilt, the more room you create in your heart for patience, for understanding, and for a healthier kind of love, one that isn't tangled up in pain or regret. I spoke with a woman once, let's call her Linda. She was in her early 70s, retired, and had 3 adult children. One of them, her middle daughter, hadn't spoken to her in over a year. The last conversation they had was full of anger. Her daughter had told her, you were never emotionally supportive, you only cared about appearances. That crushed Linda. She had spent her life working multiple jobs, trying to give her kids a good home, new shoes for school, and enough food on the table. She thought she had done her best. When she came to me, Linda said, "I don't know how to move on from this. I feel like I failed as a mother." But over time we talked about what we're talking about right now, letting go of self-blame, setting boundaries, and showing compassion without sacrificing self-respect. She started writing letters to her daughter, not to send, but to understand herself better. She wrote apologies for the things she wished she had done differently. She also wrote affirmations. "I did what I could. I am not a bad mother. I love my daughter, but I also love myself." Eventually, after months of no contact, her daughter reached out. The first few calls were tentative, but something had changed. Linda no longer entered the conversation from a place of fear or guilt. She stood in a quieter, stronger place. And because of that, they started to rebuild slowly, honestly, imperfectly, but with love. Now your story might not be Linda's story. Every family is different, but the truth beneath it applies to all of us. You can love your child and still let go of shame. You can open your heart and still protect it. And speaking of protection, let's talk about emotional boundaries. Not walls, not cold silence, but clear, kind lines. Because if your adult child continues to treat you in a way that leaves you feeling small, unloved, or constantly attacked, it's not just difficult, it's toxic. And you don't deserve to live in that kind of emotional storm, especially in this chapter of your life. Boundaries might sound harsh, especially if you're a giver. But in reality, boundaries are one of the highest forms of love. They say, "I care about this relationship enough to protect it from harm." That might look like ending a phone call when things turn disrespectful. It might mean choosing not to respond to hurtful messages. It might even mean saying, "I love you, but I won't allow this kind of conversation anymore." And yes, they might resist. They might accuse you of being selfish, dramatic, or even cruel. But remember, standing up for your peace isn't cruelty, it's clarity. You're showing them how to treat you. And maybe, just maybe, giving them an example of emotional maturity they didn't know they needed. Letting go of guilt, listening with compassion, setting boundaries with love. These are not weak responses. They are the responses of someone who has lived, someone who has loved, and someone who still believes healing is possible. And healing is possible, even when things feel broken, even when the past feels too heavy, even when your child seems so far away from who they used to be. The fact that you're here, watching this, tells me something important. You haven't given up on love, and that is powerful. Some of the hardest words you'll ever hear won't come from strangers, or people who don't know you. They'll come from your own children, the people you fed, clothed, bathed, prayed for, and worried over for decades. So when those very people turn around and say you failed them, or worse, that you were the source of their pain, it shakes you to your core. But in this moment, I want to ask you something gentle and honest. Can you still choose peace, even when you don't get the apology you deserve? Can you still move forward, even if the healing takes time, or doesn't come at all? These are not easy questions, I know. But they're the kind that help you reclaim your strength, not the kind of strength that yells or pushes back, but the quieter kind. The kind that says, "I still love myself, I still have value, I still deserve joy in this life." You see, when your child blames you over and over again, it can start to cloud your sense of identity. You might catch yourself asking, "Did I get everything wrong? Or maybe I really was the problem." But what if you stopped asking those questions and started asking new ones, like, what kind of parent did I try to be? What did I get right? What love did I give that maybe went unseen but was still real? Because not all love is recognized. Not all sacrifice is appreciated in the moment. And sometimes your child can be so focused on what they didn't get that they completely overlook everything they did. That's where you come in. Not to convince them, not to argue your case like you're on trial,
but to gently remind yourself that your worth as a parent and as a human being is not based on their approval. You are more than your mistakes. You are more than someone's version of the past. Let's say it together, even just in your heart. I am not a bad parent because my child is unhappy. I am not a failure because my child is struggling. I am still worthy of peace, love, and dignity. You don't have to carry their pain like it's your punishment. Now I know it's easy to talk about letting go, but how do you actually do that when your child's words haunt you? When your heart breaks every time you see a family getting along and wonder, why can't mine be like that? It starts with something small, a choice, a shift. Maybe it's journaling every morning and writing one thing you're proud of from your parenting years. Maybe it's surrounding yourself with friends who remind you of who you are, not who your child says you were. Maybe it's speaking with a counselor, a pastor, or someone who can walk with you through this pain without judgment. And yes, maybe it's simply saying out loud, I forgive myself. Not because you did something unforgivable, but because you've carried guilt long enough. Forgiveness isn't forgetting, it's just saying, I choose peace over pain. Now you may not ever hear the words I'm sorry from your child. You may never get the kind of relationship you always dreamed of having with them. But that doesn't mean your story ends in bitterness. You get to choose how the next chapter unfolds. I've met men and women in their 70s and 80s who finally said, I've spent too many years grieving a relationship that might never change. I want to enjoy what's left of my life. And that shift opened the door to new friendships, new hobbies, new ways of seeing the world. One woman told me, I decided to stop chasing my daughter's approval and start being the kind of person I want to be now, not who I was 30 years. That's a kind of freedom no one can give you and no one can take away. And here's something else to think about. The example you're setting now, in this very moment, is still part of your legacy. Your child is watching, even when they act like they're not. They're learning how to age with grace, how to apologize without losing themselves, how to stand tall after being knocked down. And one day, if they become parents themselves, they just might look back and say, now I get it, now I understand what you were trying to do. But even if they don't, even if that realization never comes, you can still be proud of how you handled this season of life. With wisdom, with dignity, with courage, and with love. Let this be the part of your life where you stop proving yourself and start embracing yourself. The world needs your kindness, your experience, your strength. You've come too far to keep replaying the pain. Let it be a part of your story, not the whole story. And if you're listening to this right now with tears in your eyes, I want you to know you are seen. You are not invisible. There are so many parents out there who feel exactly the way you do. You're not broken, you're human. And being human means you're allowed to feel grief and hope at the same time. So today, I encourage you to take a step, just one small step. Maybe it's writing a letter to your younger self and saying you did your best. Maybe it's telling someone how you feel. Or maybe it's simply deciding that today, you will not carry the blame. Not any. If this video touched your heart in any way, I'd love for you to share your story in the comments. Whether you're still struggling, whether things are starting to heal, or even if you found peace and want to encourage others, your voice matters. You never know who needs to hear it. And if this message spoke to you, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. We're here to walk this journey with you, to remind you that life after 60 can be full of wisdom, freedom, and yes, even healing. You deserve joy. You deserve rest. You deserve to be free. Here's to living your truth, holding your head high, and writing a new chapter filled with peace.